Hello, todos. Hola, hola, amigos. Welcome to Lima, Peru. Again, welcome to my home in the city of Lima. My name is Vanessa Vasquez. I am your Lima City guide. Thanks so much for visiting today this tour dedicated to some of the most interesting, controversial themes of the history of Peru. This is sort of like a continuation of my Untold History series that is usually focusing in events of the history of Peru that are not known. But in this series, we are going to talk about controversial things that, well, not all Peruvians feel the same about. And I think it's really interesting to be able to understand the sources of all these conflicts and why some Peruvians feel in a way and other Peruvians feel in a different way about characters of our history, about moments of our history also. For example, when we talk about a controversial character, we have to talk about Mr. Alberto Fujimori, for example, one of the presidents of Peru. Today we're going to start the series with a story of a face of not just Peru. He was not Peruvian, by the way. A Latin American personality, a hero, a man that is very much loved by many Latin Americans, but also a man that is considered to be by some Latin Americans a nefarious character, right? A enemy also to some countries. So how come is this possible? Well, today we're going to talk about Bolivar, Simón Bolivar or Simón Bolivar, a man that is also well known internationally as the fighter of the independences of the Spanish Americas. So before we start, I want to say hi to you all. Hola, hola. Thank you so much for visiting my home again. And I hope you enjoy this new series that is starting today. Also, I will have a new series too from home that is going to be about the tales from the pre-Hispanic times. So we're going to uncover different characters from the pre-Hispanic times, people that live in the pre-Hispanic times. Also, how was their life? How was the life of women? How was the life of children in that ancient times? So I really hope you can follow me, my channel, for more information about when these tours are going to be happening. Sometimes I do tours from my home, like today. Most of the times I do tours outside city. I do tours about history, walking tours, etc. So I really hope that you enjoy all of my different tours. Even I do cooking tours. So if you love cooking, please follow me on Heygo. So Marilyn, hola. Thanks for coming. Muchas gracias. Thanks for visiting again me, visiting my house in Lima. Are you ready to start with this event, my friends? If you can, please give me a thumbs up. I would like to know if you are there. I really, really wish you find interesting this lecture. Gracias, Grace. Gracias, Marilyn. So let's start with this chapter of the history of Peru. And today's tour is, by the way, it was inspired in a book which is one of my favorite. Actually, I have it here. This is the book in which I inspired this lecture. The name of this book is Bolívar, Libertador y Enemigo número uno del Perú. Very controversial topic, actually, since the very beginning. Liberator and enemy number one of Peru. So the writer of this book, Herbert Morote, is the person who also inspired me to share this story. Of course, this is not the story that every historian will share. This is definitely not the story children learn in school. We learn that Bolivar is a great hero, but sometimes when we grow older and we get to understand different facts of the reality of our nations, information that is usually not easy to find sometimes for obvious reasons, because it can be a little bit for manipulation or just to, swap under the, let's say, what is this carpet that you have at the entrance of the house, right? So you put all the dirt below, right? So in that way, people will not get to know these details. So once again, here the book, the cover, and the person who wrote this book, Herbert Morote Rebolledo, he's a Peruvian, a man from the north of Peru, from Pimentel. He actually is not a writer like formed in the university as a writer or historian. He's a doctor in economics, and he started to do this as a hobby after he retired. His book is pretty much a bestseller. You can find more information about him and his book in his website, which I'm leaving for you here. And also you can download for free the PDF of this book. It is in Spanish only, but if you would like to practice your Spanish or share with a friend that speaks in Spanish, that would be lovely. You can find it for free now in PDF, right? So we're going to talk about now why Bolivar is considered an enemy to Peru, right? This is not my words. First of all, is first Herbert Morote's words, but also there are many historians, many well-known people in the history of Peru that consider Bolivar to be one of the worst characters in the history of Peru's, the nation of Peru, right? So why? Well, first of all, and most importantly, now we have to talk about the size of Peru. How big was Peru? How was the map of Peru before the coming of the independence, right? Peru, before the Spaniards, was a large country, an empire, right? The empire of the Incas. When the conquistadors came, things changed, and we kept some territories that originally belonged or were part of the Incan Empire within the territories that became eventually the Viceroyalty of Peru. And also all the territories were gained. So here you can see, and this is an image taken from also the book I'm referring to today, the Viceroyalty of Peru in the year 1810, right? So we are still in the Viceroyalty times. Remember that the declaration of the independence of Peru made by the Argentinian liberator José de San Martín happened in the year 1821, right? So by the way, something very important is that these borders that you can see here, some elements, can you see also the section where we have Alto Peru, the High Peru area? Here, this zone is what nowadays is Bolivia, right? So it means that Bolivia was part of Peru. We were one country with Bolivia. And not just that, notice, for example, the territories in the north. Notice Guayaquil. When you visit my friend Steffi in Ecuador, you get to see, for example, places like Guayaquil with her, right? Quito is a little bit higher, of course. But this territory that nowadays belongs to Ecuador used to also be part of the Viceroyalty of Peru. Territories that even nowadays are part of Colombia also, they used to be part of the Viceroyalty of Peru. And even territories in the south that nowadays belong to Chile as well were part of Peru. So Peru was a really big country. So something very important is that when the independences of South America started, it was made a decision that the limits of the territories of the viceroyalties, the Viceroyalty of Nueva Granada, for example, in the north of South America, that corresponds to Colombia, or the Rio de la Plata Viceroyalty, Argentina, right? And the Viceroyalty of Peru, the Viceroyalty of New Mexico in Mexico. So all those borders will be respected. That is the principle of uti possidetis, which I am giving you an explanation also taken from Wikipedia, and Wikipedia never lies, right? So here we have the explanation of what is uti possidetis, which is that the borders that were declared in the year 1810, he respected like during the period of the independence, the limitation of the countries after the independences, right? So Bolivar came from, not from Peru, he was from the north. He was born in Caracas, in Venezuela, nowadays Venezuela. It was also part of the Gendarmería of Venezuela, part of the later, the Gran Colombia. The Gran Colombia was a territory that was very large, that parts of the Gran Colombia were Colombia, Venezuela, part of Panama also, and also part of Ecuador. So he belonged to a different location, right? There were conflicts, of course, jealousies between all of these nations, because there were nationalities that were also considered like inferior in terms of greatness as others, right? The Viceroyalty of Peru was a much greater land, much richer also. We had gold, we had silver, we had lots of wealth. So there is a feeling, this is the first opinion Mr. Herbert Morote has about Bolivar, of resentment towards Peru. That there is a decision at some point of dividing the land to make Peru much weaker, right? So this was the project of Bolivar with Peru. So Peru received the independence from Spain thanks to the Declaration of San Martin in the year 1821, right? But it doesn't mean we were free from Spain in that moment. Of course, no, because Spain was a nation that did not want to give up that easily those territories. The declaration was from one side, it was not accepted on the other side, of course, and there were fights. So General José de San Martín, he declared the independence, but he couldn't do it alone, and also there were lots of soldiers, Spanish soldiers everywhere, especially in the territories of the Andes in the country, right? So he needed support. And at some point, he realized this campaign would not be possible alone. So we know that even he tried to reach out to Bolivar to receive support from Bolivar. But at the end, well, we know that they didn't work together, not at the same time, right? So, well, when San Martin left the country in the year 1822, it passed about a year for Bolivar to come to the territory until the year 1823. And he came invited by the Congress of Peru, right? So the decision of Bolivar when he was here in Peru, now he was invited, he was not just coming in, he came invited to take the rule of this land, was cercenate the country because for his opinion it was too big. And also there were territories that he believed deserved to other parts, right? For example, one of his projects was the separation from Guayaquil, which actually happened. So Guayaquil became officially part of later Ecuador. Also the north of Peru, this territory here, which is what we call Jaén and Maynas, went to later Colombia. The separation also of the High Peru, Alto Peru, and this land here initially was called Bolivar, but later on it turned into Bolivia. So as a way also of thanking, the liberator and for the independences of these territories and also their own separation from Peru. But there were many people in the High Peru that were not happy with the separation from Peru because they were Peruvians. Actually, they were called Peruvians in those days. But the most important part, that most Peruvians are resented Bolivar, the high Peru, is because had a problem. I think we had a problem with the connection. I hope you still are there. Can you still see me, my friends? Everything is all right. Can you see me? Please let me know if the internet is good. Okay, great. So thank you. I just want to know if, because I saw reconnection problems. Gracias, Sara. Thank you. I will go back to what I was trying to say. So, gracias, Marilyn. So, one of his projects was separating Peru in two sections, right? So, one would be this one here, this upper part of Peru, which the capital of this territory would be Lima. And we have another section, so Peru is divided in two, right? And the capital would be Arequipa. So look at the division of the very core of the country, right? So imagine the disappointment that people started to have about the project of division of Bolivar. And also something very important is that, and also Mr. Herbert Morote says it, the writer of this book, there's no other country in the Spanish Americas that has paid such high price for its independence. You will not see any other case of a country that has paid with so much land its independence, its separation from Spain. And it was not necessary at that point. And also it's really interesting because Bolivar's project was of a unification of all the Spanish Americas, but at the same time he ended up cercenating Peru in fragments, right? So here we have another image, the Viceroyalty of Peru, Virreinato del Peru. This is the uti possidetis, let's say, the division of the country back then. Remember, 1810 is before the independence from from Spain, sorry. And here we have the nowadays size of Peru. I try to make it the same size, exact same size, I mean to match one over the other to give you an idea of the extents that were lost. Nowadays, Peru has 1,085,000 square kilometers, right? So Peru is a large country. And to give you an idea how large Peru is nowadays, I found this map that I think would be really interesting for my friends, especially in Europe, to understand that Peru is a huge country. That's why distances in Peru are also huge. When we go on a bus, for example, and let's add the difficulty of having the Andes cutting in the middle of the country, right, from north to south, the territory. So, well, indeed, a vast territory, right, and that can be better comprehended if we put it next to other famous countries, especially in Europe, right? So, as I was saying before, in the words of Mr. Herbert Morote, writer of the book we are using today as a reference, no other country paid that much for its independence as Peru. So who was Bolivar? Some information about Bolivar first before we go deeper into other much Mr. Bolivar or why there is a large number of Peruvians that don't like too much his past through the country. So some facts here. First of all, he was born in what nowadays is the Republic of Venezuela. And he is known as the liberator of 6 countries. This high rank he reached out also made him almost a demigod or a god before many people of his days, and still nowadays people are very respectful towards the story and the memory of this man. But also he was a man that suffered in his life. For example, he was a young widower. He lost his wife very young. He got married when he was 19 years old. His wife was 21 years old. He got married in Spain. When he came back to Venezuela, because he was a rich man, just a few months after they reached out Venezuela, his wife died from yellow fever. So imagine, what a terrible moment for the life of someone. And he said also in his diaries that without the passing of his wife, there would not be the fight that he fought here for the independence, because in a way he was looking for himself in Europe after the passing of his wife, and there is when he connected with the search for the independence that he then carried on in Latin America. And he died very young. He died at the age 47. He had several lovers. He was a man that loved deeply also. But the most famous lover he had was also a married woman, Manuelita Sanz. They, at some point of their life together, they live in Lima also. There is a tour I do about the place where they used to live here in Lima, in Pueblo Libre. Some facts about his life, his early life. And remember, this story is about Bolivar. Was he an enemy or friend of Peru? And we're focusing in the perspective of historians that they say he was an enemy to Peru. So that's why this event will show you possibly the most dark sides of Bolivar, right? As a way also to justify why many people believe he was such a bad person to Peru. So first of all, I was able to find really interesting information about his early years. He lost his parents very young. He was raised by his grandfather. But we know that his father was a very abusive man, very, very cruel person. He was, let's say, accused, as here in this upper part is mentioning, by many women of being raped by him, right? He did not treat people really well, right? Also, there is an interesting thing, that a story about his own sister. He had 3 siblings. There were 4 in total. And one of his sisters was also very mean to her servants, beating his servants constantly. So we can tell that he was part of an abusive family at some point. And this possibly is the reason why he had a personality that was very strong, and he treated bad people. He never looked at the eyes of people, right? So these are things that even the liberator José de San Martín, the Argentina liberator, said about him, right? The 2 liberators, they did not really like each other. Also, another thing that is very well known about him is that he used to retouch a lot, or ask for retouches in his paintings. And why? Here is the source of this. They were 4 in total, siblings. 2 of the siblings were blonde. Part of his family also are descendants of Germans. But also he and one of his sisters were darker skinned. So this must have been really, really terrible for him, because he lived surrounded by light-skinned people, fair-skinned people, and possibly that was the reason why he rejected also black people. There are many chronicles that mention that he was very abusive when he was a young boy towards black people, right? And also, there were some problems when his family tried to access to a noble title, a nobility title, because his genealogy, his family tree was incomplete. And seems that there was a person in his genealogy that possibly was a slave or a black woman. So we don't know exactly, but they were not able to access to a novel title, right? So here we have a reconstruction of his face using modern technology and the actual skull of the hero. His tomb is located in Venezuela. In Venezuela, he's pretty much considered as I said before, like a god, right? And it's completely understandable. And it was made a search of, the origin, the reasons of his death, by the way. So that's why his body was exhumed some years ago. Discovering also some high traces of arsenic and other poisonous elements, but the justification was that possibly he was trying to cure a disease using these chemicals, so he was not in purpose poison. But also it was used, this opportunity to know how was the face of the hero. So it was used different forms, modern technology to give us back the face of Bolivar. And when the face of Bolivar, the 3D image of Bolivar came out, and also it was matched with the paintings of him, that was in 2012. There were many historians that believe that no, that's not the way how Bolivar looked like. He was made look very fair skin, although of course dark hair, because we know he was dark hair. But the way how he was looking like, people believe not really. And I found another facial reconstruction of Bolivar that some people consider is more accurate. So you can see, of course, from this image that he looks indeed dark skin, and he looks even like Afro-descendant, right? So that's why I was mentioning that there are many documents that mention that Mr. Bolivar, first, after he had a painting made of him, he double-checked how was the quality of the painting and how he was being portrayed. And there were many people that were dismissed from the paintings they were doing, many artists, because Bolivar did not like the resulting of how he was being portrayed, right? So let's talk about the traces of his personality in Peru, because we're now talking about Peru. This is the story of a Peruvian writer, and of course I don't want to say that Bolivar is seen the same in other parts of Latin America, right? But in Peru, he was considered to be, during his years in this country, since his arrival in the year 1823 until his departure in the year 1826, as a person that was very, let's say, cruel, with many people that were, for example, people that were not happy with his forms of ruling. He put them also to jail, and even he sent a person to be killed because it was against the way how he was conducting the country. Also, he came with a group of soldiers, the granaderos, and when he got with his granaderos, his soldiers, into Peru, into Lima, he permitted them to ransack, to destroy, to take, to confiscate things. Seems at some point it was very common for Bolivar to do that, because we know also that he did it in Colombia, he did it in many other parts, right? So all the details, for example, that he never looked to the eyes people, he always mistreated soldiers. And San Martin commented, the hero, the liberator, Jose San Martin, commented about Bolivar that when he talked things, it was just a very big shame that he never said a single truth from what he was saying, right? Liberator San Martin had that opinion from Bolivar. Also, Bolivar came to Peru invited by the Congress of Peru. He was invited because we had a terrible period of our history after San Martin left Peru. Jose San Martin did not want it to be president of Peru or leader of Peru. He just wanted to be remembered as the liberator or protector of this land. So he established the Congress. He actually made a lot of good things. Like, for example, he abolished the tribute of the indigenous. The indigenous were submitted to the crown to pay tributes, to pay taxes. No, they were not needing to do that anymore. Africans were, their slavery was abolished. Also, the African slavery was abolished after the year 1821, thanks to San Martin, right? The Congress was established, a president was put on. So San Martin thought, well, okay, I've done my job, right? So I have to go, and he left the country. And later, well, unfortunately, things did not work very well. The Congress of Peru was in a position in which they couldn't handle two men that were presidents of Peru at the same time, Bernardo de Torretagle and José de la Ribagüero. We had a president, José de la Ribagüero, number one president, that was deputed by the Congress. And Bernardo de Torretagle became the second president of Peru, and Ribagüero decided to go to the north of Peru and continue ruling as a president from there. He even created his own Congress. So we had two presidents at the same time, right? So that's why the Congress decided to call Bolivar. And Bolivar came invited. And that's why Bolivar was also given all the powers. Like he was given all the authority. And the Congress believed, well, there was no other person suiting to rule the country in such difficult occasions as Bolivar. But, well, the resulting later was not the expected. Also, you might be wondering, what are the differences between Bolivar and San Martin? Why they are so different, distant, one to the other, from the other? Well, Bolivar wanted a American unification. So all the Spanish Americas to be one, right? From Mexico, actually from California up there in the north, down to the bottom of Chile and Argentina. So that's what he ambitioned, right? San Martin believed something completely different. He thought that the constitutional monarchy would be a best suiting reality for nations like Peru that have been under the crown, under the control of the crown, under the protection of Spain for so long, that we couldn't rule ourselves alone. Let me be honest, nowadays, after so many failures of presidents we had and terrible congresses, sometimes I think the belief of San Martin maybe was not so wrong. Because, yeah, we in Latin America had experienced and continues experiencing, authorities that are not the level to rule, right? But look at the differences between these two men. These men will never work together for sure. And also, let me tell you something, an example of a person that ended up so angry with Bolivar that even though he was considered the most important son of the independence, figure of the independence, fighter of the independence, the most illustrious son of Peru, Bernardo de Torretagle, the second president of Peru, right? A man of noble birth, a man of wealth, a man that during the time of the last years before the independence, he helped the independence as a spy, like talking to the viceroy and getting to know the information and then sending this information to San Martin. So he really ambitioned an independent country. And he was second president of Peru. And he was so angry, so mad with Bolivar's actions that were terrible in those days, that eventually he turned his back to the independence. Imagine that. And he even in one occasion when he left the band of the independentists and he returned to the royalist bands. So imagine he returned to the royalists and he went to a place that still exists nowadays in Callao, in the port of Callao, the fortress of Royal Philippe. So he got there in waiting for the Spanish troops to come. So you can imagine, his heart must have been torn in 1,000 pieces. He wrote a letter to the king, and he said that after the failed, let's say, project of the independence of Bolivar, he felt as Spanish as King Ferdinand. So yes, the illustrious son of Peru, saying at the end that because he felt completely disappointed of what he experienced here in Peru during this period, right? Finally, by the way, very sad ending of Bernardo de Torre Tagle. He died of escorbuto, I think you would call it scurvy, in the year 1825. That's a really terrible disease that pirates used to, and sailors used to have, right? Lack of vitamin C. So some pictures of images of Bernardo de Torre Tagle. He was a marquis also, no? So just to give you an idea, the character, the level of people that ruled the country, Peruvians. This was a man that was very important in Peru that eventually turned its back to the independence, right? So Bolivar is considered the first dictator of Peru. And, well, of course, you know already why. The Congress of Peru gave Bolivar all the authority to rule this nation in a difficult time, right? There was no other person suiting to do something like that in that moment. They needed tough hand. So he got the power, like all the powers that nowadays we have, the Congress, we have the power of the president, he was also the power of the military power, right? He concentrated all the powers. So the idea is that once the independence will be consolidated, he will return those powers to Peru. And yes, eventually he did it. He returned the powers and he left the country in the year 1826. 1 point for him. But the problem is that he abused of that power, as I said before, even dividing the country, like a dream that he had since before also as part of the Gran Colombia. So he divided pieces of the country, and he did not respect the borders of Peru from the year 1810, right? Also, it's very curious because yes, he said that he would never be a despot. When he received the honor of being the governor of Peru, he said that he will return this power to Peru when the consolidation of the independence happened. But in the year 1825, 1826, he passed a constitution that, thanks God, only lasted 50 days, in which he would become Presidente Vitalicio. That means president for life. So very strange, right? Now he said he will not, take the power of Peru permanently, but he created a constitution to become president for life, right? And that's why also he's considered to be a tyrant. For example, one of the greatest historians of Peru, Basadre, believes so, right? That he was a tyrant, a character of the history of Peru. So we're going also to continue. Oh, this is very important. Look what he reestablished in Peru. Do you remember that San Martin abolished the slavery and abolished the indigenous tributes? Well, Bolivar reestablished the slavery in Peru and the indigenous tributes. So one of another reason to think poorly of the period of Bolivar as a president. An absolutist despot? Well, let me tell you something. At some point, Bolivar was president of 3 nations at the same time. Well, he was president of the Gran Colombia between the years 1819 and 1830. Martin, this is really interesting. When I read this book, I was like, oh my God, I learned that Bolivar was the greatest hero with San Martin. But it's important also to not forget about this part of the history of our own histories, right? So in that way, we will not create gods where we don't have any gods, right? We have also here the times when he was president of Peru, 1824 until 1826, when he left Peru, and president of Bolivia between 1825 and 1826. So between 1825 and 1826, he was president of 3 nations at the same time. And as a curiosity, I'm showing you the flags of each one of these nations in the times when Bolivar ruled. So you can see that the flag of the Gran Colombia is pretty much like the flag of the colors, at least, of Ecuador's flag, Colombia, and Venezuela, right? And also the Gran Colombia, part of the Gran Colombia was Panama, by the way. And look at the flag of Bolivia during that time. Completely different to the flag of Bolivia nowadays. It had evolved a lot. I think the nowadays flag of Bolivia you see is from the year 1850, 1856. Yes, Marty. And here the flag of Peru, pretty much the same flag you see nowadays. Right? So Bolivar left Peru when he wanted. That's right. No, and that's, as I said before, a point for him. But what he left behind was terrible. So the medicine got worse than the disease at the end, in many ways also. So, well, the reason also why he left alone is because there was no leader, political leader, that had the courage to take him out from Peru. Everybody was completely afraid of Bolivar and his decisions, and he had the power even to kill people. So finally, when he left, Peru came into a time of sort of like a level of pacification, with what we had left, right? But the north of Peru also for a long time, the territory that nowadays is part of Iquitos, for example, or the department of Loreto in the north of Peru, was for a long period of time in debate, thanks to the decision of Bolivar of cercenating that northern part and give it to Colombia. We had terrible wars with Colombia, with our brother country, because, well, this seed that was planted during the times of Bolivar, right? So nowadays, of course, the map of Peru, at some point, there's parts that went up to Colombia and parts that kept in Peru. We kept in Peru, right? Oh, by the way, yes, I think we were not able to see that very well. Bolivar, when he returned to the north, and he went to the Gran Colombia, he declared war to Peru. Yes, Bolivar declared war to Peru and asked for I think it's over here, an economical compensation. Can you see this one here? An economical compensation for the investments he did and his troops did in the independence of our nation. Now history repeats itself. Yes, Ronnie, of course, and that's why I consider these lectures to be very important, my friend, because we cannot forget the past. It's important to remember, to try to not to make the same mistakes, to educate future generations, right? So imagine that, right? Really helps me a lot to continue growing this channel and all the information I search for you. So thank you, amiga. Muchas gracias. Here you have some maps also. This was the project of Bolivar. Yes, the Spanish America all united, right? And also, I wanted to share this map here. This was also the project of the Gran Colombia. Can you see Peru? Look at this miniature Peru. So look at Peru. Oh, this was the project of the Gran Colombia to be really big, right? Gran is great, right? So that was at some point the project of Bolivar, cercenating Peru, if possible, in half or even less than the size it had. Could it be because of jealousy? Maybe. Who knows? But well, at the end, the reality is that Peru was never the same after the pass of Bolivar. It was not divided as much as originally Bolivar thought. But what I want to give you at the end of this lecture is, what was the feelings of Bolivar after the independence? Was he repented from the independence of America, of the Spanish Americas? There is a really interesting letter he made in the year 1830, few months before he died, in which you can see the extract in Spanish. I tried to translate it in English. Sorry if it's not well translated. But yes, America, those who have revolution plumbed in the sea of nothing, basically. The only thing you can do in America is to emigrate. If it was possible that a part of the world returned to be primitive chaos, that would be the last period of America. So, wow, what a hard, let's say, piece of literature from one of the founding fathers of the of Latin America's independency, right? A liberator of 6 countries. He liberated Peru, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia. And thanks to him, indeed, Peru became independent because of his support, his troops, to be honest, basically. Finally, it was possible in the year 1824, 3 years after San Martin declared the independence of Peru, right? I really hope you enjoy this event, my friends. It's really my pleasure always to share with you pieces of the history of my country, colonial history, Republican history, pre-Hispanic history. That's why I'm going to start with a new series from my home that is called Tales from the Pre-Hispanic Times. And we're going to start with women in the ancient Peru. How women used to live, how was the role of women in the pre-Hispanic times. Marilyn, thank you so much for your tip support, my friend. Muchas gracias. And here you have also all my information. We're going to also be doing soon lots of more lectures. I have many things in my mind to share with you from my home. I think in this format, we can have the chance of having more tranquility to share pictures and talk about certain, let's say, topics. So you're invited also to follow me in my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel. Please follow my Heygo channel. I hope I can reach out 1,000 followers in September, which is the month of my birthday. That would be super lovely. And also, well, if you have some time and you came in the middle of this event, later today at 6:30 p.m. my time, I'm going to repeat this event also for those that would like to come again. If you would like to support my channel and also Heygo and you don't know how to do it, let me activate a button that will lead you, will conduct you to all the information of how you can support with a tip this channel. These are completely free to join lectures. I do them for free, as you can imagine, but also your tip support is really highly appreciated. And also we split the tips with Heygo for Heygo to continue creating content, keeping this wonderful platform free to everybody to join these events. So I highly appreciate your support. Muchas gracias, CH. Thank you. Gracias, Marlene. Yes, my little earrings. I love big earrings. So I'm so happy you like them. And please join all my upcoming tours. I'm going to be, well, first of all, so happy of having you. These events would not be possible without your presence. You know, it would not be the same if you are not here. So please join. Thank you so much for being here, and best to you all. Hope to see you in a couple of days in my next lecture. Have a lovely week and see you soon, my friends. Take care. Bye-bye. Muchas gracias. Bye-bye.